that you kind of control your own destiny, and the conditions are always changing. So, what you did last year might not work for this year, and that's the challenge that I love.
This is Fishtales, a seafood podcast. I'm John Susman. As we discovered in the last episode of Fishtales Seafood Podcast, Dwyer is a unique and talented fisherman. Working in one of the world's most dangerous fisheries from 13 years of age, he took the helm of his own vessel at 23, becoming the youngest captain to work the Bering Sea in search of one of the most high-value seafoods to be found, the illustrious king crab. The Bering Sea, located between Far East Russia and Alaska, is one of the most dangerous places to fish in the world. Sean calls the sea a continuous storm. Alaskan crab fishing is unquestionably one of the most dangerous jobs to be had. Fishermen are susceptible to crippling injuries caused by working long hours with heavy machinery and gear in the freezing, rough and harsh conditions. For many captains, these challenges would be overwhelming. For Dwyer, it's just another day at the office.
Where it gets really sketchy is when those winds are blowing and the tide's ripping and it's cold. We've lost a couple of boats in our fleet the last couple of years, which is tragedy in our fishery is kind of what spawns some of the allure to people. It's also like why we have the program called Deadliest Catch, is because it was the deadliest fishing job you could do, one of the deadliest jobs in the world. And since our fishery structure changed to that quota system I just described, we haven't had a whole lot of loss. But in the last couple of years, we've lost 2 boats to icing and heavy freezing spray. And so what happens is, you're out there and it's cold. Obviously, it's it'll be in the negative degrees C for sure. It's like in the 20s and the teens for Fahrenheit, and when that wind starts blowing, it kicks up spray, and the spray sticks to the boat, and it changes the vessel's center of gravity. So big seas are in my mind annoying. They're not dangerous per se. Our boats are pretty stout. It's funny, the boat that I started fishing on, the Jennifer A, when it would get really rough, when it was too rough to fish and too rough to travel, we would just kick the boat out of gear and drift. We would just bob, we'd let the waves push us around, and we were as safe as could be. So our boats are inherently, stable, but when you pile that ice on and that center of gravity gets raised up and it changes and shifts, that's when things get really dangerous. And, some of the most scary times that I've had is when you've got a boat full of crab or a boat full of pots, and then you run into some weather and then it's getting cold out. And that's, the boats start getting heavy and you can feel it. You can feel the roll of the boat as the boat's rolling side to side. It's starting to hang out and then slowly right itself back. And that's the scary stuff. And so we get out there and, you go out and you break ice. Guys get out there with rubber mallets, big rubber mallets basically, and break the ice off the boat. But we've had times where we will be in that kind of weather and just what we call jogging, which is just trying to keep the boat in place, moving as slow as possible, building as little spray as possible. You can build 2 inches of ice in an hour, 3 inches of ice in an hour. And that's on, that's a lot of weight, right? It starts to build, and then the surface that it's building on is now bigger because it's got ice, and it's just this big snowball. And the guys, it's terrible on the crew, because you're fishing all day or all night, and then you stop because it's rough weather, but that doesn't mean you get to rest. You just got to go swing a hammer every couple hours to break ice off the boat. And actually, one of the biggest tools, if it's cold like that and you're as far north as we are in the Bering Sea, a lot of times you're by the actual sea ice pack, and if the wind is blowing out of the north, it's that cold wind. And what you'll do is you just drive the boat towards the sea ice. And as you get up towards the ice, it's way colder. I mean, it's you could be below zero and blowing 40 knots, but that ice is basically like a blanket on the water surface, and it kills all that spray. And so, it's crazy. You'll be sitting there and it'll be blowing. I mean, I can remember sitting next to the ice pack a couple of years ago. It was blowing 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour, and the boat would heel over on those big wind gusts, but we were in the ice pack. So it was like a big blanket, and it was flat calm, cold, blowing really hard. But you're just like, it's almost like you drove the boat into like a parking spot, and it's just like nestled in. And so it's that ice is it can be your friend sometimes.
The red king crab is a very large species, sometimes reaching a carapace width of 30 centimetres and a leg span of 1.8 metres. King crabs are unique not only because of how large they are and how delicious their meat tastes, but also because they only have 6 legs. They are one of the most prized premium seafoods to be found, in high demand throughout the world of fine dining.
A lot of our king crab is exported. We have a big market for like kind of the Thanksgiving holiday market, but there's also a big following for king crab in Japan. There's a holiday that is in the fall that they like to have our crab for. In a recent shift, we've had more product going to like domestic United States and Canada, North America. Our snow crab, a lot of that ends up domestic. Snow crab is kind of like is the cheaper alternative to Bering Sea king crab. And there's a lot more of it typically. So that's the kind of crab that you'll see at the restaurants or in food service or at hotels. And like the big casino hotel kind of thing in Vegas where they have the big buffets and they've got, crab, all you can eat kind of stuff. Not a lot of our product ends up at the supermarket for the consumer to purchase, directly. It does. There's a couple of seafood or supermarket kind of chains here in the US that carry our crab, and, they'll have it at your local store. But a lot of it goes into food service.
King crab fishing is a high stakes business, but with the big risks come big rewards. It attracts a special kind of fisherman who's prepared to work long hours in harsh conditions, but for who the thrill of the hunt is never diminished.
That is one of the hardest parts of the job, is crew and crew management. It takes a special kind of person to go out there, really. I mean, you're a long ways from home. You're there for a while, and it's a hard job. So typically, I've been fortunate enough to hire guys that have some sort of fishing experience, whether that's salmon fishing in the summertime or halibut fishing in the wintertime or spring, or even trawling for pollock or something in the Bering Sea or whatever it may be. I try to get guys that have boat knowledge and fishing experience, because it kind of tees them up to be ready for what we're going to go do. In my mind, and this is probably just me thinking selfishly, I think that Bering Sea crab fishing is the hardest kind of fishing you can do. And so there's not very many boats out there, so it's hard to get guys that have experience doing it. This year, we only had 38 active vessels. Your average crew, round that up to 40, and then 6 guys per boat. That's only 240 people in the world that fished crab in the Bering Sea this year. So, it's hard to get guys with experience. Back in the day when there were 300 boats, no problem. There were guys walking the dock all the time. But nowadays it's, you try to get guys that have experience on boats, and then you kind of go from there. And it's tough. It's not as glamorous as it used to be. I mean, I was talking about that big shift in that total allowable catch. mean, that translates to less money for crew members, right? I mean, 2 years ago, they were all making really good money, a couple $100,000 a year off of this crab thing. And, you cut that by 90%. That's a pretty big cut.
Deadliest Catch is the hugely successful documentary series which chronicles the life of the Alaskan king crab fisherman. Premiering in 2005, it's become one of the highest rating shows in the world. Becoming a star of such a show is both rewarding and at times an anchor.
It's an amazing thing, really. I mean, I don't have any way to describe it other than, it's an incredible program that's really covered the whole world. I got on the show when my dad was going through all of his ALS stuff. My mom, she was his primary caretaker, and she found that writing was a good way for her to kind of express herself and vent, her frustrations. And that first boat that we had sinking, my mom swore up and down that her son would never go out and fish crab in the Bering Sea. And here we are. So when I started fishing, my dad was sick and my mom was stressed out. So she wrote a blog that was called Crabby Mama. And a producer from the show found that blog and said, "This is great. We want to have you guys on the show." And they sent a camera crew for an interview, kind of like a practice run, and things went well, and then off we go. So it's been crazy. I mean, I've been on the show. I was on the show for 4 years in a row, from season 12 to season 15, and then I was off the show. My contract expired, and I frankly probably wasn't exciting enough for them to want to renew my contract. And then last year, they with that big reduction in our fisheries, they reached out again and said, "Hey, we're looking to get another boat or two back on the show. We liked what you had last time. Do you want to come back on?" And I said, "Sure." So there's two guys that come on the boat with us, and the first thing that happens is that the boat is rigged for production in Dutch Harbor. So the production company, Original Productions, they'll fly about a dozen people up and a couple 1,000 pounds of camera gear, and they mount stationary cameras on the boat that record to decks. There's 4 of them, and then there's 2 camera guys that come with us as well. One of them is the lead guy in the wheelhouse. He's the producer. And then there's another guy on deck who's a deck shooter. And they work together to really kind of capture what we've got going on. I mean, the logistics of it are a little complicated sometimes, just because you have 2 more bodies on the boat, and then you have all this gear that gets set up. You have these cameras that are mounted, and then of course they need to have their spare equipment and whatnot. But as far as interactions with the camera guys themselves, I've only had one guy out of probably a dozen that I've worked with or more on board a vessel that really just didn't work out. And the guy was going through some personal issues, and he left on his own accord. But, they really they do an amazing job, really, of getting people ready for what they're about to experience, and then also trying to match personalities. Because, the thing about it is that I can't. I tell my crew members, a camera holds you accountable. They're not going to make you say anything you don't want to say, but if you said it, then you said it. So, and really kind of getting a guy that's that you get along with, or a crew that you get along with, it really makes it more fun. There's always something that happens. I mean, that's why the show has lasted as long as it has. It's no 2 days are the same, and things happen. And, so for the camera perspective, the production perspective, being able to capture that sometimes they miss things. The stationary cameras help pick up the slack there. And then, it's really just about having the camera crew kind of cooperate with, the vessel crew to get good content when things do go wrong. I'll be honest, I don't watch the show. I've seen probably two of the two shows out of the 5 seasons that probably 100 shows that I've been on. I watched it the first couple times, when it first came out, we had like a party with our friends and family, just something low key. And I looked at myself on the camera and I thought, man, I hate this. I don't want to see myself talking. My voice sounds weird to me and I don't like it. And, so I haven't watched it, but I get looks from people. There was an episode a while back where, me and one of the other boats were, having some communication breakdown issues and I wasn't responding and he wasn't responding, and that made some people angry. And, I was at the, at the supermarket and a guy came up to me and, said, "Oh, you Sean?" I'm like, "Yep." He's like, "Huh? Yeah. I'm a Cornelia Marie fan. I don't like you." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Thanks. I'm going to go ahead and get my steaks and move on." So, yeah.
It's not just the captain and crew of a Bering Sea fishing boat that are subject to the stress and strain of being at sea. Consider the impact on the families of the fishermen, not knowing how, when, or even if they will return safely from their work.
Oh, I think it's pretty tough on them, when I'm gone. Thing about it too is that, when I'm up there, my focus, it really has to be, directed 100% towards what the task at hand. I have a tough time keeping up on emails. I have a tough time keeping up on, communications sometimes, just because of the nature of the job. When you're in those, those situations where you're building ice or it's rough or whatever, it's hard to be, as the captain, it's hard to be concerned about what's going on at home. And Bree does an amazing job of understanding that and realizing that, it's not that I can't communicate right now or I don't want to respond. It's just I've got to pay attention to my guys that are on deck and keep people safe. And and so I know that she in a way has kind of protected or not told me things that are going on at home just because she doesn't want me to think about it. And, for the good of everybody, basically. And it's tough, she knows, my mom knows, everybody kind of knows what's going on. And that it's a dangerous job and that every time we leave the dock, there is a possibility that we might not come back. So, being gone this last year and having our daughter at home, for me, it was harder. I mean, it was harder to keep my head in the game sometimes, and yeah, it's rough, it's sometimes it's all you can do to just keep focused on, okay, I just need to get my head back in the game and get back on these crab and, try not to be too homesick because we have satellite, communications. We can text on WhatsApp or, FaceTime, and we can talk back and forth. And it's a beautiful thing, but sometimes it's like a distraction too, and I have to realize sometimes to get home quicker, I need to just make some decisions, that are based on fishing, not anything else. So, yeah, it's a tough part of the job.
Since 2005, when the Bering Sea crab fishery converted from a derby or Olympic fishery where the best fishermen caught the most to a quota management system, the stocks and health of the fishery have been closely monitored and managed. Along with quota, the fishery managers impose harvest strategies which aim to maintain sufficient spawning stock for sustainable, ongoing harvest. But the threat of climate change promises to be the biggest challenge to the commercial fishermen in the Bering Sea.
So our king crab season has has been closed this last year. It's the first time it's been closed in over 25 years, and that was due to a reduction in stock populations. That fishery, I think, is really climate dependent. And so what happens is every summer there's a survey, and it's currently going on right now. There's a survey that goes out and samples the Bering Sea to figure out the crab stocks, and then the TAC is set from there. And that survey came up with not a lot of crab anywhere, frankly. And that's how we ended up with our king crab season closed and our snow crab season down 90%. So when I think about what the future might be for the fisheries, my personal biggest concern is climate change in the Bering Sea. And I've seen it just in my short tenure. I've seen it to where instead of going a day out of Dutch Harbor, we're going 3 days out of Dutch Harbor to the north. And, we're having to chase these crab way, way, way further away than we ever have, further to the north, further to colder water. And to me, that's the biggest standout is that the Bering Sea is changing, and what that means, and if it's if it's like a short time cycle or if it's a long term thing. Obviously, we have an idea that the Bering Sea is warming generally over the long term, but we do get these cold snaps that bring the temperature back down temporarily, and the stocks move pretty quick. But there's other issues at hand. There's predation. Codfish, Pacific cod, like to eat crab. We've seen them really kind of rise up in the last couple of years. There's bycatch issues with different fisheries operating in the Bering Sea that may or may not have bigger impacts than we think, and so it's really kind of what you don't see on the show is all the behind the scenes of what it takes to really come up with an amount for a directed fishery, and the political process that it is to maintain the health of these crab stocks. And that's something that I was kind of born into as well with my parents, is that it's not just about fishing. It's a lot more involved than that. There's a lot that goes on to set the quotas, to monitor the stocks, to keep regulation in check, or, to add regulation to make the fishery more profitable or beneficial to the communities. So, there's a lot to it.
With such a short, intense fishing season, most Bering Sea crab fishers are involved in other fishing activities. For Sean, it is about using his skills and knowledge to use his downtime from the Bering Sea productively.
We bought and we recently just sold, actually. We had a little for us, a 34-foot long boat that we were fishing Dungeness crab with in the Puget Sound area here in Washington. And we're thinking about upgrading that boat and doing something a little different. So we actually just sold it. We're in between seasons and figure out what we're going to do next. But that fishery is a blast. So if Bering Sea crab is like, big chess game with heavy equipment and, lots of crew members and big crab pots, Dungeness crab is like the exact opposite. You're on a small boat in inside waters, protected waters. The boat goes fast. You're fishing little pots, and it's just myself and one other person. A lot of times it's Bree, or it's one of my guys that I work with on the other boats that are just kind of doing it for fun. But it's a cool little fishery. We catch Dungeness crab, and we deliver them live to the dock every afternoon or night. So we're back in town every night. And the crab, it's some of the first live crab that hits the market in October, and so a lot of it gets shipped to China. A lot of it gets to the domestic live markets. So California is a big consumer. East Coast, it's pretty cool. Like, you bring the crab into the dock, and by 5 a.m. the next morning, the crab is on a plane either to China, New York, or on a truck to California. And that crab is being consumed about 24 hours after we've caught it. So it's a cool little fishery.
Like many next-generation fishermen, Sean is an eternal optimist, looking to the future with a mix of both excitement of fishing and the challenge of raising a young family.
Well, we're raising our daughter. We're starting with that, and she's 10 months old. And so, yeah, normally I'd be up in Alaska in the summer times, doing salmon tendering operations on the boat, which we're basically a big freight driver for fish at that point. And I'm not there right now. I'm at home spending time with Bree and with Blakely, our daughter. And yeah, I don't know. The fisheries are in a little bit of turmoil. The summer survey that's going on right now will be a really big deciding factor as to what the future of our fisheries look like. But for me personally, I think commercial fishing industry is my passion, and it's kind of going to be where I spend my career in one form or another. I don't know, if Bering sea crab is on its way out, or if it's going to be on hold for a little bit. I'm going to have to find something else that keeps me busy. And if that's, more Dungeness crab or, different fisheries like salmon or halibut, blackcod, or even maybe just working in the industry for a different outfit. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of waiting to see what happens this summer, but it'll be something fishing related, that's for sure. I love the challenge, and I love that no 2 days are the same. I mean, that's really what gets me is I really like that. That it's always something different, and it keeps you on your toes. You get really good at fixing problems or making decisions quickly to be able to adapt, right? I mean, whether that's business decisions or even just daily fishing operation decisions. That's the fun stuff, is that you kind of control your own destiny, and the conditions are always changing. So what you did last year might not work for this year, and that's the challenge that I love.
Constantly challenging the weather, fishing conditions, crew and vessels to chase an often elusive catch, Sean Dwyer is a young professional who is passionate about what he does and who he does it with. He is a modern professional, but is a true fisherman to the core. This is Fishtales, a seafood podcast. A Deep in the Weeds production. I'm John Susman. Follow us on Instagram at Fishtales Seafood Podcast, or email us at fishtalespodcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay tuned for more tales from beneath the surface of the seafood world every Friday on your podcast app.